3 down and only 1 anime season to go before 2025 is firmly in the books. Last season went out on a high note. Why don't we just call it there, huh? Oh, anime exports are one of the 3 things keeping the Japanese economy afloat? Silly me. Capitalism doesn't stop for artistic integrity of all things. What was I thinking? And speaking of my own profit motives, I'm on the hunt for anime that brings in the views. I mean, that I enjoy. Yeah, no other reasons. So how did I end up picking my roster for fall? Of course, I used my usual method. I put a poll on my Patreon and for my YouTube members to vote on what I should watch, with a few that stood out for me personally. What? Were you expecting some topical political joke made in poor taste? Sorry, weirdly, nothing's happening in the world for me to riff off of. Must just be a slow week in the news, I guess. Anyway, here's your obligatory call to action before I give you my lineup. Subscribe, comment, hype, or whatever random buzzword YouTube is pushing these days. It helps me spread my garbage opinions all over the internet. Who wouldn't want to help me with that? Now let's actually take a look at the roster before I get into my first thoughts. Hero without a class, who even needs skills, kicks off the season by promising mediocrity from the outset, so it can't even legally sue. A gatherer's adventure in Isekai is yet another ordinary guy with cheat abilities in another world. My awkward senpai spices up your workplace gossip with uncomfortable sexual tension. I should probably get my mind out of the gutter for This Monster Wants to Eat Me, but that's a struggle when you live there. My gift level 9,999 unlimited gacha has me checking to make sure my bank account wasn't stolen again. May I ask for one final thing is another in a growing line of misunderstood villainous revenge plots. Someone should probably just leave introverts well enough alone, but we're just not getting that with inexpressive Kashiwada and expressive Ota. The banished court magician aims to become the strongest, probably spoils the entire anime from just the title. Let this grieving soul retire actually got a second core? Poor bastard. Someone should probably do a wellness check on Japan with all these end-of-the-world anime coming out lately. Enduring after the apocalypse is their latest cry for help. Dojima wants to be a common rider is a midlife crisis if I ever saw one. Healthy relationships are a thing of the past, and my best friend's little sister has it in for me. Dad is a hero, mom is a spirit, and I'm a reincarnator? Thanks, that gave away the entire plot. Wow, we're actually getting an anime with a non-exploitative job in a mangaka's weirdly wonderful workplace. That's new. Yeah, being fat isn't really a gimmick, but I guess Japan didn't really get the memo, so we're stuck with plus-sized misadventures in love. My status as the reviewer obviously exceeds, my status as an assassin obviously exceeds the hero's. That line was harder to read than you'd expect. Oh hey, finally a second season I've been looking forward to in Campfire Cooking in Another World. One Dance teaches us self-improvement always starts at the first step. The dark history of the reincarnated villainess is what every shitty author fears, getting stuck in their own poorly written story. Look, I'm sure there's a dirty joke and Little Miss Vampire Can't Suck Right, but I'm above making it. Yeah, it's only taken 10 years, but the 3rd season of One Punch Man finally makes an impact. And lastly, furries are eating good. Oh, sorry, no they aren't. Millipensi's come to reap another, and with you our love will make it through. Damn, that's certainly a lineup of what I'm tentatively calling anime, so let's take a look. First up is Hero Without a Class, who even needs skills. So a kid was born to a master swordsman and magical genius, only to not get a class or skills when he turned 10. But no worries, he still has confidence he'll make his mark on history with sheer effort. And you know what? Bro's the main character. I'm sure he will. Will I enjoy that process? No. Whoa, that's not fair. I should probably give this more of a chance than just the synopsis to form an opinion, but honestly, I don't need to look much further than the studio attached to know where this shit show is heading. Oh, would you look at that? It's Studio ACAT, and I'm sure people are already getting the beginning after the end flashbacks, but I'm getting ahead of myself. The setup for this isn't the best, as while it does establish the setting, it's also not terribly memorable. A goddess gives people classes for really no fucking reason at all. So our dude not having one should be a pretty big handicap, but because his parents trained him, he's still strong enough to beat people with classes even as a kid. Oh, also classes and skills are just bullshit, since apparently the dude can learn skills consciously with effort, instead of just doing them instinctually like everyone else. You kinda kill the whole hard work beats shortcuts vibe when the kid's just a prodigy, and does all that hard work off screen, mind you. Tonally, this show is pretty fucking weird anyway. Our main guy is both optimistic, but also entirely monotone, so he sounds dead inside. And I can't even really tell what this show wants me to feel most of the time anyway. Like, is it funny, tense, dramatic? I don't know, because what's being said has no weight, and the music cues just kinda ruin it. And that's not even mentioning the animation, which is painfully average, but none of that makes this outright bad, just not special or even really competent. But that's also part of my problem with modern fantasy anime. They're interchangeable, and I'm honestly just burned out on watching the same old show reskinned with a new protag, and of course the obligatory waifu eye candy. So this is probably going to be below average at best. When looking at the seasonal lineup, you can't swing a stick without hitting either an isekai, OP protag fantasy, or villainous anime. And on second thought, keep swinging to thin the herd, huh? A Gatherer's Adventure in Isekai is certainly another one. Well, two of them if I'm being honest. Our main guy is some average dude living a normal life when he's sucked into another world, given OP cheat abilities, and embarks on the usual isekai bullshit because a god hopes he can prevent civilization from collapsing. Wow, I know what you're thinking. That sounds like Stakes, but you'd be mistaken. It's the usual slow-paced, mild adventure isekai schlock that's become a plague on the seasonal release schedule. As for the first episode, it's fairly inoffensive as far as these anime go. The dude's dropped off, figures out his gathering skills almost immediately, and establishes himself in his new setting. Like, he's pretty aimless, just accepting a quest because it pays well, despite him not really needing the money in the first place. But sure, why not? It gives him an immediate goal. I guess my biggest issue is the writing here is a lot of, because it's the next thing this genre of isekai does, without really questioning why that makes sense in the first place, even for this setting, let alone in general. Yeah, in case you hadn't noticed, that's more checkbox filling than story writing. If I had to say what it's most reminiscent of so far, possibly The Greatest Alchemist of All Time from Winter, that's the sort of vibes I'm getting from this show. The animation is again on the middling side. It's not flashy or even trying to do anything special. Hell, some of this art is even flat out goofy looking, but ultimately it's passable for a slightly below average anime. Yeah, I'm not super thrilled about this, but I've also seen worse starts to a season. Office romances never go smoothly in anime, but let's see if my awkward senpai can buck that trend. Not much to the synopsis that the title doesn't already cover, but a woman meets the new hire at her job where he's cute, nerdy, and easy to talk to, so she starts having feelings for him despite her being the epitome of awkward around people. I mean, this isn't really a story-driven show, so as long as the premise carries your attention enough to get invested in the characters, it's doing its job. And the beautiful, successful woman who comes across as a super serious hardass, but is actually an introverted klutz, is at least a decent enough twist on the leading lady trope that it's interesting. Like, the fact that we can hear her fretting over her own ineptitude at least makes her endearing. As for the dude, he is approachable, and while it is a bit of that opposites attract trope, there is chemistry there too. That's important for the first episode. And hey, this does make their interactions cute without relying on banter, which is honestly becoming quite the crutch in these sort of shows. Yeah, I didn't really have high hopes for the production after seeing Studio L was attached. They worked on GBet, Summoned to Another World for a second time, and Banished Healer, all shows that sucked on pretty much every front. What colored me surprised when I found this episode wasn't just competent, but mixes visual styles and nice looking art that actually gives this one a higher end production feel. Like, insane, they're actually putting effort in here. I've seen a lot of office romance anime, especially lately, but this one has legs, so we'll see where it goes. Yuri fans are eating good this season, no pun intended, with This Monster Wants to Eat Me. One day, a mermaid approaches our main girl whose body is tasty as hell to monsters, and says she's come to eat her too, but not just yet. Like a fine wine, teenage girls have to mature. That came out wrong. So the mermaid's gonna protect this girl from other monsters until she deems her ripe. Phrasing. Thus some complicated feelings between her and her future killer develop. This one definitely sets a mood, and while a Yuri anime, it's less romance and way more drama, almost bordering on horror. Even touching on some complex topics like depression, suicide, and isolation, and it handles them well enough that it gives this anime some narrative weight. It tells us a lot visually, and I found the characters incredibly easy to relate to even within the first episode. The trauma buried in the main girl's backstory doesn't feel like a cheap trick to make you sympathize, but a defining moment in her life that she's still trapped in. Her relationship to the mermaid is both tied to her past trauma thematically, and quite literally to her future. So there is meaning that I'm interested in unraveling here. Studio Lings is behind the production here. They're the girls' love studio apparently, because every goddamn show they've made so far has been one. And why the hell am I just now finding out? Now the animation isn't special, but the art looks nice and there's care in the cinematography, showing the staff knew how to tell this story. From shot choice, right down to music and sound design, it's all on point, elevating this beyond most other anime this season. I'm invested in this one, so I'm excited to see how it plays out. Looks like someone's gacha addiction bankrupted them artistically as well as financially with unlimited gacha. So a human dude, representative of the weakest race in this fantasy world, gets betrayed by his party members and finds himself trapped in the lowest level of a dangerous dungeon. But before Harifuruta's lawyers get in touch, he taps his previously garbage skill, and RN Jesus blesses him with a badass waifu to protect him from all the dangerous monsters. Fast forward, and bro has an army of capped level waifus ready to invade the surface world for revenge against those who wronged him. Well, that's a mouthful of a synopsis considering it's essentially a cross between Harefuruta and Eminence and Shadow, minus the isekai aspects. And sure, that would probably appeal to some people. I mean, not me. The premise is almost too silly to be played straight, but it certainly tries to regardless. So we get a bog standard fantasy story pulling aspects from half a dozen different franchises, cobbled together for a shitty revenge plot. The characters are flat as hell, especially the protagonist, who goes from wide-eyed newbie adventurer to jaded overlord hellbent on revenge within a single episode. And that's on top of the fact that the inciting incident is jarring to the point that it feels almost random. Yeah, there's no rhyme or reason to the setup, so I have very little investment in this series. The animation is fine, probably on the better end of competent, at least in this first episode, though certainly not memorable. Like, it flows well, despite the story not, and even has some moments of eye candy to catch my interest. But at the end of the day, it's still a story steeped in cliches and borrowed elements, but so convinced it's breaking new ground that it's almost laughable. We're looking at how to use violence to solve all our problems, and may I ask for one final thing? Stop me if you've heard this one before, but a noble girl's prince fiancé suddenly calls off their engagement at a ball by denouncing her as an evil villainess, and tries to ruin her reputation. But instead of being exiled or finding a new path in life like is so common, our main girl decides that the only thing said dude deserves is a good old punch to the face, repeatedly. While using the usual villainous anime setup, we're getting a different kind of story here that isn't sad or about reinventing yourself. It's a straight up revenge plot with fantasy action. The main girl's a breath of fresh air for just how done she is with this bullshit, and the fact she kicks ass is welcome as both catharsis and a switch from the typical villainous premise. So I'm interested in how it rolls with these twists. Switching that up is a fun narrative style that brings levity while reinforcing how things play out. Like a noble lady politely explaining the current situation as she's in the middle of cold-cocking her would-be rival tells me this understood the assignment. As for the characters, the lead is strong, not just physically. She's packing a good sense of justice and a pretty level head, which is a rare mix. Lead in Films is handling the production here. They're a studio that varies wildly in terms of quality, from Call of the Night to Goblin Slayer's second season. I'm not blown away by the art in this one, but the direction is on point here while still looking presentable, so it's off to a pretty good start. High school rom-coms have been in a bit of a renaissance lately, so let's see if inexpressive Kashiwada and expressive Ota can keep that rolling. The class clown sets his sights on breaking the stoic girl's facade, and through his repeated failures, the two get closer. This is a pretty cute rom-com that's on the more chill side of things. The jokes are slower, and the overall humor is more restrained and situational, rather than outright zany. Our class clown type dude is more of a troublemaker than anything else, one that would surely get a lot of hate in any other anime for his antics, because they're borderline bullying. So yeah, let's just admit it, this is kinda towing the line on that. However, our Kudere type does break a lot of the conventions we usually see. Like, she's less stone cold and more spaced out, but also the one actively pursuing this relationship in the first place. Also, you know, pink-haired twin-tailed Kudere, that's a unicorn in of itself. So it's at least trying to be different despite still using the tired setup of one quiet lead with an outspoken one. So how does it fare in that? Well, the ROM's a bit early to tell, and the com's so light and stretched out that it's not exactly wowing me. Mostly it just seems to have the main joke it rams straight into the ground in the first episode, but if a Haden-san taught me anything, it's that even slower paced comedy can still grow on me. So looking at it more through that lens, the dynamic is at least cute, helped in that department by some sleek artwork and designs. Though, admittedly, that is faint praise. especially since there's already a rom-com doing essentially the same premise with better characters this season. But if you're looking for something slower paced, it might be worth checking out. Are you tired of the Banished Ex is actually the strongest type of stories? Me too, but I'm still looking at the Banished Court Magician aims to become the strongest, so our main guy gets kicked out of the Princess Party because they were too dumb to realize he was carrying their asses with support spells. Of course, that's how that always goes. Thus, he rejoins his old crew and starts tackling some real dungeons. I don't really know what to say about this anime. Title is the synopsis, the premise is overdone, and I barely cared going in. The intro here is a fucking mess. Like, it has the balls to show this dude's training flashback literally at the start before I even get a name or reason to care, immediately sets him up as a prodigy, and then there's just zero effort to try and get the audience invested in this character before skipping forward to him getting fired. Sadly, that would have been a better starting point. Pretty much every other in this genre does, so why not? I'm sure you'll be surprised by this, but the pacing moves way too fast with too little connective tissue. Like, we get a flashback, inciting incident, meeting old friends, and skip to them clearing dungeons all on episode 1. And I still know fuck all about the plot or characters. I'd consider that a failure. If you're hoping the art, animation, or direction will save this, don't bother. The first episode is marginally above average for these sort of anime, but that's faint praise when the studio here worked on, the second season of Mao-sama Retry and Nobody's Way Up to Exploration Hero? We'll be lucky if this is still watchable after episode 3. Yeah, this is just another OP pro-tag fantasy anime, which are now a dime a dozen at this point. Hell, there's others this season alone that are, well, not better. They've all been pretty bad, but this certainly isn't doing anything unique to stand out either. I didn't expect Let This Grieving Soul Retire to get a second season, but silly me. This is actually his second core, so it was probably in production from the outset. The first outing of this was flawed, but overall an enjoyable experience. Like, the plot here was good. The fact we follow a guy who's clueless and incompetent, but lucks his way through every encounter as leader of the strongest guild in his neck of the woods, while also maybe not being as weak as he thinks he is, gives this anime legs. But where it fell flat for me last go around was how poorly paced the first core was. It felt like we were still being introduced to the main cast and premise halfway through, so what I'm looking for this go around is if the pace picks up. And the first episode here is essentially a flashback to how Tino got involved with the Grievers. Wait, didn't we already see this? Maybe not in this much detail, but it does feel like it's bordering on filler as she recounts the tale to pretty much anyone who will listen. Don't get me wrong though, it's honestly a nice reintroduction to the series, and we're seeing more from other members we've yet to encounter. All as it brings us back up to speed on how this series bounces around its story for comedic and dramatic timing. So, a pretty decent jumping back in point, though I guess we'll still be waiting to see where this series goes from here. In the most on-point title this season, Touring After the Apocalypse is exactly what it sounds like. After civilization collapses, two girls bike around Japan on a sightseeing trip, mix in some sci-fi elements, and you've got a strangely fun slice-of-life series containing mini-adventures. So how well does it execute that premise? Pretty well. The intro is light, setting up some match shots with a big focus on scenery. Our two leads are energetic and bright spots, which sounds like it might clash with the post-apocalyptic setting on paper, but honestly it works well because it's telling a personal journey without a rush. I mean, they have all the time in the world essentially, so why stress? Yeah, this won't have broad appeal as there's not much of a story, but with a focus on characters and exploring the ruins of near-future Japan, it's got some intrigue to a specific demographic. One I'm probably in since it's basically a cute girls doing cute things anime, only with light adventure splashed in for tension. The production here is on the lower end of the scale. They're using a lot of CG to cut animation costs, but I've certainly seen worse. This one gives the impression it's much worse looking than it actually is. The art team went all out, which is good since the setting is as much a character as the people, but then the character movements are all choppy and stiff, so there's a budget feel here. Like, the animation's just not great. If you like slower paced slice of life stuff, this could be some much needed variety. Midlife crises go to the next level and Dojima wants to be a Kamen Rider. Growing up, our main dude wanted to be a Kamen Rider super bad, but now that he's pushing 40, that dream is firmly buried. Well, until he gets wrapped up in a crime wave by a fake version of the gang in that show. And as fate would have it, our dude gets his chance to shine after all these years. We're introduced to our main character through his fixation with the classic Japanese series, following his life that led him to the current day, before launching into the actual premise. It's much more of an origin story with motivation than info dumping, while also doing it in an engaging way. but where this anime shines is in how it blurs fantasy and reality. Like, our dude is so into this Kamen Rider shtick that he's trained to be an actual badass, but in more of a retro style. So dude feels like he's plucked straight out of the 80s, making for some great moments that are both funny and kick-ass for an amazing mix. Yeah, this series has a ton of personality on top of an interesting story, so worth looking into for that alone. But I'm also loving the look for this show. It's got a classic vibe, pulls heavily from a stylized shonen manga aesthetic, and flows pretty well overall. Oh hey, this is Leading Film's other anime this season. They're definitely putting more effort into this one, and not just on a style front, but in the animation as well. It's energetic, and the cinematography is on point too. Again, evoking that vintage vibe. I've been light on things I've been legitimately excited for this fall, but this one has my attention for sure. Whoa, we're already at the mid-video ad break? Crazy, this season's just flying by. But since I have your attention, why not hit the subscribe button if you're enjoying the video? I've already broken the flow to slip in a planned ad break, so why not hit you with a double dose of begging for subscriptions too? Anyway, back to more first impressions. There's always at least one rom-com you know is gonna be trash each season, and my friend's little sister has it in for me is giving off the vibes. So a guy works for his uncle's game dev business, but as a condition of his employment, he has to pretend to be his cousin's boyfriend. Hold on. Title says friend, description says uncle's daughter. Confused? Yeah, me too. I had to look up a better description for this one because they're different characters entirely. His friend's little sister is an honor student at their school wanting to break into voice acting against her family's wishes. So she's also going to be working in secret for the uncle's gaming studio. And I'm sorry, there's too many damn layers of complexity for what amounts to a budget Nagatoro with a forced third wheel tsundere cousin. Also, the Japanese title translates more along the lines of she's only obnoxious towards him, so why the hell does the English one sound like she's out for blood, huh? Okay, I'm getting distracted. In practice, it's a pretty by-the-numbers high school rom-com, with a heavy emphasis on side plots you'll get confused for being the main plot, banter, and a main girl who will likely end up grading by the end of the first episode to most viewers. Yeah, her teasing and casually threatening to call the police gets old pretty quick. And dude's not so much a straight man to her antics, but actively trying to shut her ass down. Yeah, it's less relationship chemistry, and more of a hazardous material risk. As for the animation, I'm honestly surprised Project Number 9 didn't snag this. Seems like it'd be right up their alley. I mean, it does kinda look like their work anyway, though it's by Blade. They're the studio who did I Have a Crush at Work in Winter, and a few less fondly remembered anime too. Not off to a great start, probably because it's chuckling a lot, with a studio I'm less than faithful in. I don't even have to play guess the protagonist in Dad's a Hero, Mom's a Spirit, and I'm a Reincarnator, because there's never been anyone with more main character vibes than this. So our girl was a scientist, reborn into a fantasy world, but with a unique power due to her parents' particular biological makeup. She can straight up manipulate the elements, and not the folksy type like earth, wind, and fire, but the actual periodic table elements like oxygen, platinum, fucking uranium, whatever. She can do it. But when old family drama comes up, their happy, slow-paced life comes to an end. The setup is honestly pretty good here. It frames the plot like a fairy tale, before dropping all pretenses and revealing it's only been like a decade since the dude became a hero. He's also pretty childish, his wife is super lovey-dovey, and that gives us some contrast to the lead girl as the voice of reason. On the other hand, the plot's on the slower side, even by first episode standards. Most of it's spent getting us up to speed on the characters' histories because there's a lot there. Plus, the stakes are small considering it's human politics for an inciting incident. But I think the biggest issue, and in hindsight it's not that big at all, is just how this kicks off. Yeah, it's pure coincidence. There definitely could have been a stronger reason to get the characters involved in the plot. That's all I'm saying. I am liking the cast so far, even if the story's taking me a bit to get invested. As for the art and animation, it's by JC Staff, and they're not bringing their A-game here. It's clearly getting less attention than their other anime out this season, which are Unlimited Gacha and One Punch Man. Wow, that makes too much sense. It's off to an okay start, but I'm also not terribly impressed. So we'll see where it goes from here. Is a mangaka's weirdly wonderful workplace another depressing comedy about the manga industry? Or a cute girls doing cute things show whitewashing it instead? Probably the latter, since it's a pretty standard comedy anime starring a manga artist or editor and assistant, full of jokes centered around the industry and avoiding work. Plot? Don't expect any. It's cute girls drawing manga. What do you expect? So at that point, the humor and characters have to carry. How did they fare? Well, the main artist is a goofball, her assistant is the hard ass keeping her in line, and the editor is the glue that holds the group together. So, pretty basic dynamic for these sort of shows, but I will give it this. The characters are energetic and have good chemistry. Like, it's believable that they're at least close work colleagues, bordering on friends. That's a step in the right direction. For humor, while not making me laugh out loud, I did chuckle a few times. There's a big emphasis on the daydreaming and overreactions by the mangaka, while everyone else reins her in. As for the look, I actually kinda like it. The designs are nice and expressive. There's even a few breaks in the presentation to give it some variety. It's about the manga industry after all, so we should probably see that incorporated somehow besides just through drawing. So okay animation, at least some creativity in the presentation at times, and care given to comedic timing to reinforce the jokes. Hey, it's already doing better than most of this season so far. For the plethora of comedy anime out this fall alone, this one's probably got my attention the most. Though admittedly that's a low bar. Let's see if the plus-sized misadventures in love is worth the calorie surplus. So our main girl is fat and has a load of self-esteem issues, but because of a doomed crush on a hot guy she stalks, she fails to kill herself only to realize after regaining consciousness just how cute she is. So will that confidence boost inspire change? You know, I'm not a big fan of these fad or ugly gimmicks we've seen in anime the past few seasons, because they just kinda seem like lazy hurdles to a relationship. But this one's at least different. See, this girl's glow up isn't a weight loss thing, it's purely her perspective from some amnesia after her accident. Though it does still treat that as a punchline, undercutting the positive message somewhat. The main girl's optimism and cluelessness leads to some comedic moments that work, but there's definitely a strange mashup here. Like, the circumstances that led to her supposed suicide attempt didn't just go away, especially when it turns out it was an attempted murder, so there's some mystery too to give this longevity. The art and animation is pretty plain, like there's no style or desire to frame things in an interesting way. Hey, here's an example. The obvious approach would have been to do a POV or hide the girl's face until the reveal after she wakes up in the hospital, but screw suspense. I mean, I guess it moves well enough, but there's a lack of ambition here that kinda killed it. This could have been a great anime with a goofy but sincere premise had they put in the effort. Honestly, I kind of expected this to suck, but I'm pleasantly surprised with how funny and engaging it is. Okay, Isekai has kind of been bombing this fall, so let's see if my status as an assassin obviously exceeds the hero can course correct. Our boy gets summoned to a fantasy world with his entire class by a king, but something's not quite right. See, he's got super high stats and notices the story's not quite adding up, but after some digging, he uncovers a terrible secret that makes him public enemy number 1. Thus, he's out to set things right. Yeah, sounds like a pretty bog standard isekai plot, and it really is on the surface. It follows the usual setup we've seen done a million times in garbage isekai, but our dude being stronger than the hero is the first red flag that gets him asking the right questions. So it's focusing on the mystery and shady shit, rather than trying to rug pull a standard isekai setup, which makes this immediately more interesting. The main dude's a serious type who's actually thinking in his current situation, instead of just letting the plot guide him like so many other protagonists do. Hey, agency in our protagonist on top of a story I want to see play out. The action in this goes really hard, like it's presented beautifully with nice animation, sweeping shots, great choreography, and nice cinematography to amp up the tension while telling the story. I'm impressed with the look here. This is animated by Sunrise and they're an old school studio. That's a compliment, mind you, because they've been making anime since the 70s. Between the coloring and style, this harkens back to moody retro anime despite being a modern piece. That helps it stand out, and I'm really hoping it carries through. So I'm excited to see where this will lead. Campfire Cooking finally got its second season. This was a fun isekai about a guy getting summoned to another world as accidental collateral with some high school kids. But hey, he's got Amazon on his side, and befriends some legendary monsters while making his own way as an adventurer and merchant. There's been quite a few in this genre lately, but this one's actually well done and knows what it wants out of it. Glorified food porn. And hey, don't we all? So how does this second season stack up? The story isn't super developed, as it's more of an aimless, light adventure thing, but even that's really just an excuse to go cook some delicious food, of which this gets right to it. We've got more characters added, which kind of just amounts to more mascots. At least they're not annoying. I don't know, there's really not much to say about it. This is a relaxing isekai that's been given some love by the studio. The art and animation are consistent from last season, so it still looks nice while making your mouth water. Obviously a must-watch for fans of the first season, but if you like less than traditional, more slow-paced style isekais, this is right up your alley. I haven't had a good sports anime in a while, and I'm really hoping that Wand Dance fixes that itch. As debatable as dance is in the sports genre, don't at me. So our boy enters high school ready to go with the flow and not stand out due to his stuttering problem, but after seeing his classmate dance without a care in the world, he works up the courage to go try it out for himself. Yeah, yet another journey of self-improvement, which is all too common in high school anime. But this one's certainly a mixed bag, won't deny that. First, the dude is like weirdly normal and has friends, so what the hell is he even trying to improve? I mean, his stutter's pretty bad, and I guess he got laughed at in middle school for his lack of coordination while dancing, but that's also not really impacting him socially, like, at all. The girl, on the other hand, is laid back and probably the only immediately memorable character in the series, so we're definitely suffering from a fairly unremarkable core cast. On top of that was an unfocused storyboard where the plot was progressing, just without a clear understanding of time. Like, has it been a day, a week, a month? I don't know. So, Madhouse is working on this with another studio, and you can tell who did what from shot to shot. Some scenes are incredibly detailed, slick, with beautiful art and smooth animation, followed immediately by shitty CG that's completely out of place. Hell, sometimes even in the same shot. Look, I don't think I would have minded this as much if it had been purely CG, but the constant switching is not only distracting, it's highlighting how bad the CG looks due to the difference in quality. And again, I would probably kill to see Madhouse do these dance scenes traditionally. Oh yeah, just like they did in the opening few seconds. Never mind. Disappointed? Absolutely. I came in expecting a cool dance series, and got a badly animated mess half the time. We're taking self-insert fanfiction to the next level in the dark history of the reincarnated villainess. Our lead girl spent her teenage years writing edgy romance fics, only to end up stuck inside one as the lead villainess. So we follow her as she fights against all the self-inflicted death flags, but I'm more curious how things will go when it's off script. So yeah, this is a slight twist on the villainous isekai genre, and I do mean slight, where the poor writing of the story our character is trapped in is her own damn fault, considering she's not a professional writer. This was a product of her middle school angst, and reflecting on it as an adult, she's stuck with all the cringe. Here's the thing, this series is pretty self-aware because the main character wrote this story, so there's an emphasis on comedy over plot, and I think that's probably for the best. But aside from that, there's really not much separating this from any other villainous isekai. Hell, even that little focus on comedy doesn't. Yeah, our lead isn't really special in the genre. She's a wisecracking girl focused on surviving, but I guess realizes the story's protagonist is kind of her ideal self and wants to protect that as a result. We'll see how that develops. I'm probably reading too much into it. Who's working on this again? Oh, Studio Dean? Wow, could have fooled me. Despite the art and animation not being amazing, it does flow well and has a solid grasp of comedic timing. Visually it's invisible, but the good direction actually sucks you into the series. Hell, there's even some fun ways the scenes are presented. But to be perfectly honest, the opening and ending have probably the best animation overall, and I guarantee those weren't done by this studio. Anyway, I'm liking it so far. I have seen worse villainous anime, and this one's at least entertaining in the first episode. A preemptive get your mind out of the gutter? We're looking at Little Miss Vampire Can't Suck Right. The new vampire transfer student everyone idolizes gets paired up with an average dude for cleaning duty, where he realizes that she's actually a failure of a vampire who can't suck blood properly. Thus, the two strike up an unlikely partnership to improve her dental dysfunction. Our girl's status as a vampire is immediately known, and monsters are just sort of functioning members of society in this town because that's what lets there be a cute vampire girl lead. Oh, sorry, I misread that. It's actually because of some guardian deity, blah blah blah. Look, plot isn't this anime's strong suit. She's coasting on that vampire shtick for clout until her little secret gets out. Didn't mean to rhyme there. And then our main dude is... No, seriously, what the fuck is he? I do get it. He's meant to be an anybody character, but his lack of features make him stand out more than the actual background characters, who got better designs. But I'm sure you're asking, how does this actually play out? One note gag strung together by this bare bones plot, the main one of which is literally in the title. Our guy's maternal instincts kick in from there, and don't ask me how that works, but it's a joke that it really loves the visuals of. So that really just sets up people expecting her to do cool vampire shit, and she just doesn't for a whoa, that's unexpected punchline. Yeah, all that cool world building setup shit for a high school gag anime with a gimmick. And that's all. Pepper in some chibi scenes for extra cute, and you've got what legally constitutes as otaku bait. Feels behind this one, and it's presentable. I mean, it's not a high effort or concept show, so the simplistic art and such mesh with it. It moves well, and I would say it generally looks pretty nice. So, props for that. Look, I don't hate this anime's first episode, but I'm also painfully aware I'll probably forget it even exists by the end of December. Yeah, you've had to have been living under a rock for the past decade if you don't know about One Punch Man. And this is the long-awaited, by anime fans that is, and absolutely dreaded by manga and webcomic readers, third season of this show. What's in store? Well, considering it left off on a pretty big cliffhanger, 6 years ago, we're finally seeing the conclusion to the Monster Association arc. Or so I hope. Yeah, it's a long arc with some incredible moments, and we're just kind of getting to the start of it, so unless this season's 24 episodes or a split core that hasn't been confirmed yet, we're probably not going to see the conclusion. As for how this stands up, well, league's better than season 2 in terms of animation. JC staff is trying here, but it's still a far cry from season 1, and as great as that was, we won't be getting another season like that even if Madhouse took over again, just due to the circumstances that created that season in the first place. But overall, this does feel like the series is finally getting what fans wanted. Time taken on adapting a pretty great series that has insane action and great comedy. Now we are off to a bit of a slow start, as it does have to finish setting up the stakes and such, but what follows is essentially a long climax, so it's well worth the wait. I'm actually looking forward to One Punch Man coming back, instead of just relying on the manga for my fix. So that's already saying something, right? Wow, furry representation is back, and with you our love will make it through. So a tardy girl bumps into her fellow classmate who's also late, only to discover he's a beast folk. Insert some racism to add drama, and our girl looking past that to see the guy for who he really is, not just his fluffy exterior. Yeah, setup is key here. The beast folk are introduced naturally as probably an unethical experiment by humans, and they're just now starting to integrate into society. That sets the stage for a lot of tension, as their relationship with humans isn't too great, both on a macro scale and for our characters. Initially, this does boil down to just racism, but with a fresh furry coat of paint, I think it probably could have explored that more with how these negative stereotypes develop. Maybe because Beastars handles the issue much better, there's an almost direct comparison. But anyway, as for what we get, pretty decent introduction to the setting and characters through that lens, making for a cohesive first episode. Our leads are a bit cliched as far as romance anime go. You know the ones, the stoic, tall, athletic guy and short, easily flustered girl. But that works as a launching off point for this series. If you expected this to be hot garbage because it's a romance anime with a dog boy, I'm happy to report it's at least engaging with the concepts it introduces, which is far better than a lot of romance anime this season. Can already tell you that. I roast Millipencil as often as I can because, well, let's face it, they fucking deserve it. And a lot of that hatred is outlined in my somewhat recent video on Soma Spider So What. Oh look, there's a card in the upper right hand corner to it. Not telling you to click it, but it's there. But to summarize, it's not necessarily an animation issue. In isolation, their work looks really nice, but when combined with the direction, framing decisions, and overall storyboarding, most of their anime turn into visual noise. Now, they are on their best behavior in this first episode, though their fingerprints are still clearly all over this series by being cutesy with their framing, but otherwise, the art and animation do look good. I guess we'll see if they fuck it up with their obnoxious editing down the line. Honestly, this is off to a pretty good start. So that's it. Usually spring and fall have the anime heavy hitters, so it's a bit weird feeling underwhelmed by the final season of the year. That could easily change though, as some of these do have potential. But tell me your thoughts down below. What anime are you most excited for this season? Obviously I couldn't watch everything out, so there's bound to be some that I missed. But for now though, hey, you've made it to the end of the video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and do all the other YouTube stuff to help the channel grow. You can also join my Discord with the link down in the description if you want. And if you really want to support me, you can head on over to my Patreon or check out my channel memberships. And speaking of supporters, I'd like to give a special thanks to JMonth33A, Pokeflute, Robin DBL, Tristan, and Vonstrom for their continued support. Thanks for watching.